accurately coastlines, land shapes, details that shouldn't have been known for hundreds of years. This map is known as the Piri-Reis map, created by Ottoman Admiral Piri-Reis. At first, it seemed like a normal navigation chart, but when historians studied it closely, something didn't add up. It appeared to show parts of South America with surprising accuracy, but more importantly, some believe it shows land resembling Antarctica without ice. And that's where the mystery begins, because Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, over 300 years later. So how could this map exist? Piri-Reis himself gave a clue. He claimed the map was based on much older sources, ancient charts, lost records, possibly even knowledge passed down over centuries. Imagine being a cartographer in the 1500s.
Welcome.
No satellites, no modern tools, just fragments of maps, stories, and partial knowledge. Yet somehow, you recreate coastlines with precision. Some historians argue it's coincidence, others believe it's misinterpretation, but some suggest something deeper, that ancient civilizations may have mapped the world long before we thought possible. If that's true, it changes everything, because it means knowledge wasn't discovered once. It may have been discovered, lost, and rediscovered. History isn't just what survives, it's what gets passed down and what gets lost. Entire civilizations, entire discoveries can disappear over time. The Piri-Reis map isn't just a mystery, it's a reminder that what we think is new knowledge may not be new at all, and somewhere in history, there may be truths we've completely forgotten. Imagine a ruler so clever, so cunning, that even the smartest advisors were powerless to challenge them. They didn't rely on brute force, fear, or wealth alone. They wielded invisible rules of influence. Today, we uncover the psychological laws that made some of history's most dangerous leaders unstoppable. Power isn't obvious. Most people see the throne, the uniform, or the title, and assume that's where influence comes from. But history tells a different story. Leaders like Julius Caesar and Napoleon Bonaparte didn't rely solely on their armies. They understood the human mind. The most powerful leaders played a game with invisible rules that ensured obedience, loyalty, and fearing exactly the right balance. Let's explore one of the most critical laws of power. Always make those above you feel superior. At first glance, it seems obvious, but its psychological effect is profound. By making your rivals feel confident, you disarm their suspicion. Napoleon would publicly praise his officers while secretly positioning them where he needed them. Caesar mastered the same trick in Rome. They gave senators the illusion of influence while maneuvering them into political dead ends. This tactic is still used in corporations and social hierarchies today. Most people underestimate the subtle art of making your targets believe they have power, while the reality is you're guiding every outcome. Consider a psychological experiment. One person was told they were in charge, while others secretly followed predetermined instructions. The leader believed they had full control, but in reality, the true organizer was manipulating their decisions from the shadows. Those who mastered the mind-controlled events without anyone realizing it, even subordinates who thought they were acting freely, were playing into the plan. Make your opponents feel safe while slowly tightening control. Never reveal your intentions. A ruler must conceal their plans. Take Cleopatra. She mastered psychological influence over Caesar and Mark Antony, not by military might, but by understanding desire and perception. She crafted gestures and words to manipulate perception. Every meeting was calculated to create trust, admiration, or fear when necessary. Modern CEOs use similar strategies: public praise, subtle delegation, and controlled exposure to information all mimic the tactics of ancient rulers. Most of us think we are immune, but human psychology has not changed. Your colleagues, friends, or rivals are subject to the same patterns. One of the most dangerous rules: control attention and perception, and you control reality. If you can shape what people see and believe, you shape their decisions. This applies to negotiations, social influence, and online interactions. The invisible game is always being played. You just need to recognize the moves. True influence isn't about shouting commands, it's about mastering the psychology behind every decision and action. Master the mind. Control the game. Imagine walking into a room and instantly people pay attention, not because you shouted, not because of your title. It's something far subtler, something most people never notice, yet it completely changes how others treat you. This is the hidden behavior that commands respect. We often assume respect comes from achievements, from wealth, from power, But psychologists and social researchers tell a
Welcome to the
different
stream,
story.
Mozzarella.
The way you hold yourself, the micro
Thanks
actions
for
you
sharing.
take,
Groove
and how to
theory.
manage presence can create authority without you saying a single word. The principle is simple. Controlled presence creates automatic respect. Examples: standing or sitting with deliberate posture, speaking slowly, purposefully, not rushing your words, strategic pauses that make people listen. These cues signal confidence, calm, and control, three things humans are wired to respect instinctively. Take historical leaders, for example. Abraham Lincoln often paused thoughtfully before responding. Marcus Aurelius used deliberate gestures and calm tones to command attention. Even Machiavelli emphasizes that perception shapes obedience. Notice a pattern. They weren't loud, they were precise, calculated, and invisible in their influence. Think about a modern scenario. You enter a meeting. You observe. You don't speak immediately. People start filling the silence. You wait. Then, when you speak, every word lands. Every idea
Good to see
carries
you,
weight.
Roger.
This is the
FF.
power of
Junior,
timing and
welcome.
presence. Why does this work? It's called status signaling. Humans are wired to recognize who is calm, composed, and unshaken when someone doesn't overreact, doesn't fidget, and speaks with measured clarity. It triggers a subconscious response. They are in control. They know something I don't. They are worth listening to. Every social group,
Zen.
every
Thanks for
team,
coming in.
every organization has an unspoken hierarchy. You don't always need a title. You don't always need authority, but people always notice behavior. Eye contact that conveys confidence, controlled gestures that indicate calm voice under pressure. These are invisible signals of dominance and leadership. Picture a negotiation to people with equal skills. One is calm, the other fidgets, interrupts, or rushes their words. Guess who is more persuasive? The calm, controlled one. You don't need to say, "I'm in charge." Your behavior proclaims it. Here's the twist. Most people think confidence comes first and respect follows. The truth: subtle behaviors create confidence perception, and respect follows almost automatically. Once you master these invisible cues, social interactions,
Hey, Nazma
negotiations,
Salsabila,
and
welcome
influence
in.
situations
How's it
shift
going?
in your favor, often without anyone realizing why. Step 1. Practice stillness. Stand or sit with awareness. Don't fidget. Step 2. Speak deliberately. Slow your words. Pause strategically. Step 3. Observe reactions. Adjust micro behaviors. Control your presence. Step 4. Combine with consistency.
Welcome, Bilal
Respect
Batra.
builds
Good
over
to have
repeated
you.
displays of calm authority. Respect isn't about force, loudness, or titles. It's about invisible behaviors that signal control, confidence, and calm. Master these, and influence
Thanks for
comes
being
naturally.
here, Lee
People will
Sang.
listen. They will follow. They will respect. And it doesn't just work in offices, meetings, or politics. It works everywhere. Motivation is the biggest lie in self-improvement, because the days you need it most are the days it disappears. Not when things are easy, not when you're comfortable, but when it actually matters. Everyone loves motivation when it's there. It feels powerful. You feel unstoppable. You train harder, eat cleaner, focus more. But here's the problem. That feeling doesn't last.
Cax Pahit.
When it's gone,
welcome.
most people
Thanks
stop.
for joining.
That's because motivation is emotional, and emotions are unstable. They change based on sleep, stress,
Hey there,
environment,
Kolabucko.
and
Welcome
energy.
to the stream.
So if your discipline is built on motivation, your results will always fluctuate.
Welcome
Discipline
and
works
Stephanie
differently.
Smangelo.
It removes
Thanks for
emotion from the
tuning in.
equation. It replaces how you feel with what you do. You don't ask yourself, "Do I feel like doing this?" You decide, "This is non-negotiable." You wake up early. You're tired. Your body wants more sleep. Motivation says, "Rest today." Discipline says, "Get up." And that moment is where progress is decided. Because success isn't built on your best days. It's built on your worst ones. The days where you're tired, you're distracted, you don't feel like doing anything, but you still show up. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they're inconsistent. And inconsistency comes from relying on feelings. Feelings change. Standards don't. Think about training. On a motivated day, you push hard. Everything feels good.
Good
But
to
on a
have
bad
you.
day,
Welcome.
you skip. Now zoom out. That pattern repeats
Tiger.
over weeks,
Hey,
over months.
welcome in.
That's where results disappear. Discipline closes that gap. You train on good days. You train on bad days. You remove the decision, because every time you decide, you give yourself a chance to quit. Your brain is designed to avoid discomfort. It looks
Thanks
for the
for
easiest
joining.
option,
Donnie
the fastest
LBBC.
reward, the least resistance. Motivation feeds that cycle. Discipline breaks it. You sit down to work. Your brain looks for distraction, phone messages, anything easier. Motivation says, just take a quick break. Discipline says, stay locked in. That small decision changes everything. High performers don't rely on motivation. They build systems, routines, environments. They remove friction before it starts because they understand consistency beats intensity every time. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for motivation to show up because it won't be there when you need it most. Build discipline instead. Build standards and follow them without question because the people who succeed aren't the most motivated. They're the ones who show up even when they don't feel like it. There was a city so well hidden that entire armies walked over it and never knew it existed. Not destroyed, not abandoned, hidden on purpose, beneath dry land, beneath ordinary ground, beneath places people thought were empty. There were doors, not doors you could see, not doors marked with stone or symbol, but hidden entrances carved into the earth, leading downward, deep, further than anyone expected. And what they found was not a tunnel. It was a city, not a small one, not a temporary shelter, a fully engineered underground civilization, layer after level, rooms carved with precision, hallways designed with intention, entire systems built, not for comfort, but for survival. This wasn't random. This wasn't primitive. This was planned. At the surface, everything looked normal. Villages, open land, nothing unusual. But below, thousands of people could disappear without a trace.
Welcome.
And
Make
they
yourself
did.
at home.
When invaders came, they didn't defend the land. They didn't fight. They didn't stand their ground. They vanished. Entire populations gone overnight. No bodies, no resistance, no signs of panic, just silence. The invaders would arrive expecting war. Instead, they found nothing, empty homes, abandoned tools, stillness, and that confused them because there's one thing armies rely on, reaction. They expect fear. They expect resistance. They expect chaos. But when there's nothing, they don't know how to respond. And that was the strategy, not to fight, not to defend, but to remove themselves from the battlefield entirely. Below the ground, life continued, quietly, control, discipline. There were ventilation systems so air could travel through multiple levels. There were food, storage rooms designed to last for long periods. There were narrow tunnels built in ways that forced movement to slow down. And there were massive stone doors that could be rolled into place, sealing entire sections of the city. These weren't just shelters, they were defensive systems. Every detail had a purpose, every design solved a problem. Every structure assumed one thing. At some point, someone will come looking, and if they did, they wouldn't find an easy target. Some tunnels were intentionally confusing, built to disorient anyone unfamiliar. Some passages narrowed so tightly, only one person could pass at a time. Others led nowhere. Dead ends, traps for those who didn't understand. Imagine entering a place like that. No light, no sound, no map, and no idea how deep it goes. Now imagine knowing that the people who built it understand every inch of it. That's not a battle. That's control. And control is always more powerful than force. Above ground, kingdoms fell, cities burned, empires collapsed. But below, this civilization endured, not because they were stronger, but because they understood. Visibility is vulnerability. If your enemy can see you, they can plan. If they can find you, they can attack. If they can predict you, they can defeat you. So these people chose something different. They chose invisibility. They didn't try to prove strength. They didn't try to show dominance. They simply removed themselves from the equation, and that made them untouchable. Think about it. Every war is based on one assumption, that both sides will engage, that both sides will show up, that both sides will fight. But what happens when one side refuses? There's nothing to conquer, nothing to destroy, nothing to win, and that breaks the entire system. The invaders will leave, confused, frustrated, unfulfilled, because there's no victory in conquering emptiness, and eventually, they stop coming back, not because they were defeated, but because there was nothing left to fight. And that's how the city survived, not through power, not through dominance, but through strategic disappearance. Over time, the entrances were forgotten, the knowledge was lost, the locations faded into history until one day, centuries later, someone found it again, a hidden door, a passage, a descent into something that shouldn't exist. And suddenly, what was invisible became visible again, rooms untouched by time, structure still intact, systems still functioning. A civilization that had mastered survival in a way
Thanks
most
for
never
joining.
consider,
Try
not by
Garham.
standing their ground,
Hey,
but by
Junior
choosing when to
Tumble,
be
welcome
seen.
in.
Most people think survival is about strength, about fighting harder, about pushing back, about proving dominance. But history tells a different story. The ones who last aren't always the strongest. They're the ones who understand positioning, timing, control, and restraint. Because power isn't just about what you do, it's about what you refuse to do. That city didn't fight, and because of that, it
Good
couldn't
to
be
see you.
destroyed. Real power
TBLS
comes from not reacting immediately, not revealing your position, not giving others access to your moves. Sometimes, the strongest move isn't to push forward. It's to step back, disappear, reposition, and wait. If they can't find you, they can't fight you. If they can't
Welcome to the
predict
stream.
you, they
Try
can't stop
Ani.
you. And if they don't understand you, you've already won. The underground city no one was supposed to find. This underground city wasn't discovered. It was uncovered by accident, because beneath a normal home, there was an entire hidden world. In Derinkuyu, Turkey, a man knocked down a wall in his house. Behind it was a tunnel. That tunnel led to another and another until it revealed something impossible. An underground city extending multiple levels deep into the earth. This wasn't just a shelter. It had ventilation shafts reaching the surface, water wells hidden from outsiders, massive stone doors that could seal entire sections. Even livestock had space underground. Thousands of people could live there, completely hidden. But here's the question. Why build an entire city underground? Not for comfort, not for expansion, but for disappearance.
Jinga.
Historians
Glad you're here.
believe when invaders came, the population didn't fight. They vanished. No smoke, no movement, no sign of life. And when enemies arrived, there was nothing to conquer, because the safest city is the one no one knows exists. There are structures in this world that shouldn't still be standing, not just because they're old, but because everything we know about history says they shouldn't exist at all. And yet, they do, perfectly placed, precisely
Thanks for
built,
dropping in.
still surviving thousands of years later. No machines, no modern tools, no clear explanation, just stone and a mystery that refuses to go away. We like to believe that history is understood, that everything has been mapped out, explained, documented, but every so often, something appears that doesn't fit the timeline, doesn't match the tools, doesn't follow the rules. And when that happens, we don't always get answers. Sometimes we just get silence. Across different parts of the world, there are massive stone
Hey,
structures
CD,
that
grab
have
a
survived
seat.
time itself, not decades, not centuries, thousands of years, and not in ruins, but still standing with a
Welcome
level
in.
of
Hey,
precision that
see
modern
on our
engineering would
FCS.
respect today. Perfect alignments, massive blocks weighing tons, placed in ways that don't make sense for the time period they were built in. Some of these stones are cut so precisely that you can't even slide a blade between them. No gaps, no filler, just perfect joints. And the question that keeps coming back is always the same. How? Because
Good
when
to
you
have
go
you.
back far
Tika
enough,
Gurum.
the tools we believe they had don't match what we see. Primitive equipment, basic construction methods, nothing that explains how massive stones were transported, lifted, and placed with that level of accuracy. And yet, the evidence is right in front of us. Not theoretical,
Anastasia,
not
welcome.
imagined,
How's
real,
it going?
untouched by modern intervention, still standing exactly where it was first built. So explanations start to form. Maybe they used ramps, maybe they used manpower, maybe they had techniques we don't fully understand, but every explanation feels incomplete because it explains parts of the process, but never all of it. And when you look closer, you start to notice patterns, similar construction styles appearing in completely different parts of the world. Civilizations separated by distance, yet building in ways that feel connected, not identical, but too similar to ignore. And this is where things become uncomfortable, because if these structures weren't built the way we think, then something is missing from the story, something we haven't accounted for, something that changes the way we understand the past. Because history isn't just about what we know, it's about what we assume. And when those assumptions break, everything else starts to shift with it. Some believe knowledge was lost, that earlier civilizations understood more than we give them credit for, that over time, that knowledge disappeared, not destroyed,
Thanks
just
for
forgotten,
being here.
passed
Moreno.
down in fragments until it eventually
Hey,
faded
Fidya,
completely.
welcome to
Others
the
believe
stream.
something else entirely, that there were influences, connections, or methods that we haven't rediscovered yet, not because they didn't exist,
Good to see you
but
here,
because we don't
Nick.
fully understand where to look. And this is the part that keeps the mystery alive. Because no matter how much we study these structures, no matter how advanced our tools become, we still don't have a complete answer. Only theories, only partial explanations, only guesses, trying to fill a gap that hasn't been closed. But maybe the real question isn't just how they were built. Maybe it's this: why were they built with that level of precision in the first place? Because surviving thousands of years isn't an accident. That level of durability, that level of design, suggests intention, purpose, planning beyond a single lifetime. And that changes everything. Because if these structures were built to last, then whoever built them was thinking far beyond their own time, far beyond their own generation. They weren't just building for themselves. They were building for something that would outlive them completely. And maybe that's why we still don't fully understand them, because we're trying to explain them from a modern mindset instead of understanding the mindset that created them. Some structures are built to function, some are built to impress, but some are built to outlast time itself. And those are the ones that leave the biggest questions behind.
There are structures on this planet that shouldn't exist, not because they're old, but because they're too precise to be ancient. And the strangest part, we still can't fully explain how they were built. Deep in remote locations, far from modern cities, far from advanced machinery, massive structures stand, perfectly aligned, perfectly measured, perfectly placed. These aren't rough constructions, they're not flawed, they're not primitive. They are engineered with a level of precision that even today would be difficult to replicate.
Glad you made it.
Stone blocks, weighing tens of thousands of kilograms, cut so precisely that you can't fit a blade between them. No cement, no modern tools, no clear method, and yet they've stood for thousands of years. Think about that. Civilizations rose, collapsed, disappeared, and still these structures remain untouched. Not cracked, not broken, not degraded the way they should be. And that raises a question most people never ask. How do you build something that lasts longer than your entire civilization? Because that's what this is. These weren't just buildings, they weren't just monuments. They were built with intention, for something beyond the present moment. Look at the alignment. Some structures match the stars, perfectly, not approximately, not close enough. Exact, which means whoever built them understood positioning on a level that most people don't even think about. They weren't just building for function, they were building with awareness of time, space, and permanence. Because now the question isn't just, how did they build it? It becomes, what did they know that we don't? Because precision like that doesn't happen by accident. It requires planning, measurement, consistency, control, and most importantly, intent. Some theories say lost technology, forgotten knowledge, generations of skill passed down and refined. Others say we're underestimating ancient civilizations, that they were far more advanced than we give them credit
Martins,
for.
thanks
But
for
no matter
joining
what
us.
explanation you believe, one thing is undeniable. These structures weren't rushed. They weren't built for quick results. They weren't built for recognition. They were built to last. And that mindset is almost completely gone today. Everything now is fast, temporary, replaceable. But these structures were the opposite. They were designed with the understanding that time would test them. That's not just construction, that's strategy. Because if you build something that survives everything else, you control what remains. You control what gets remembered. You control what defines history. Think about it. The people who built these structures are mostly forgotten. Their names lost, their stories unclear, their lives erased by time. But their work, still here, still standing, still forcing people into question everything they thought they knew. And that's power. Not temporary power, not visible power, lasting power. Because real power isn't just about influence in the moment, it's about impact, long after you're gone. These builders understood something most people don't. You don't need to be seen and to be remembered. You don't need recognition to have impact. You don't need attention to create something powerful. You
Hey
just
there,
need to
trademark
build
Mass
something
Brow,
that
trademark.
can't be
Welcome.
ignored. And that's exactly what they did. Even today, and with all our technology, all our knowledge, We still look at these structures and ask, how? And that question is what keeps them relevant. That question is what keeps them powerful. Because mystery holds attention, and attention is influence. So while everything else fades, these structures remain, not just as relics of the past, but as proof that something was done right.
Welcoming winner.
Something
Good to
was
have you.
built for forever. Most people focus on speed, quick wins, immediate results. But the things that last are built slowly, carefully, with intention. Because anything rushed breaks. Anything built for attention fades. Anything built without depth collapses. But something built with precision, with patience, with purpose, survives everything. If you want to build something that matters, stop thinking short-term. Stop chasing visibility. Stop chasing quick results. Start focusing on
Thanks for coming
precision,
in. Oliver
structure,
Harvey Todd.
longevity. Because the strongest
Love.
things in
Lie
history
not alone. Welcome.
weren't
Make
built
yourself
fast.
at home.
They were built to last. And that's why
Good
they
to
still
see you in the
exist,
chat, friend.
while everything else disappeared. Anyone can build something quickly, but only a few. Build something that time can't destroy.
Throughout history, thousands of towns have appeared and disappeared. Places that were once full of life
Hey, Kageth.
now stand
Thanks for
silent and
joining.
empty. These abandoned communities are known as ghost towns. A ghost town is a place where people once lived and worked, but where the population eventually disappeared. Sometimes the buildings remain, streets still exist, shops and homes stand frozen in time, but the people are gone. Many ghost towns began as boom towns. These were communities built rapidly around industries like mining, railroads, or trade. When valuable resources were discovered,
Welcome,
workers rushed to
Mojang
the area.
Bantam. Hope
New
you're
businesses
doing good.
opened, homes were built. The town grew quickly, but boom towns depended on a single economic activity. When that activity ended, the town often collapsed. For example, mining towns frequently disappeared once the mineral resources were exhausted. Without jobs, residents moved away in search of new opportunities. Over time, the town became empty. Some ghost towns disappeared gradually, others were abandoned almost overnight. Natural disasters sometimes forced entire populations to evacuate quickly. Floods, volcanic eruptions, severe drought. In other cases, economic changes destroyed the industries that supported the town. Railroads changed routes, factories closed, trade routes shifted, and the population slowly moved elsewhere. Today, ghost towns offer a fascinating window into the past. They show how quickly communities can rise and fall, and they remind us that even thriving towns are often more fragile than they appear. Walking through a ghost town today feels almost surreal. You see houses where families once lived, stores where businesses once operated, schools where children once studied, but now the only sound is the wind. History leaves behind traces of the lives that once filled these places, and ghost towns remain as quiet reminders of how quickly entire communities can disappear.
An entire empire collapsed, almost overnight, not slowly, not gradually, suddenly. Around 1200 BC, the world was stable. Powerful kingdoms ruled vast lands, trade connected civilizations, armies controlled borders. Everything was structured. Then, everything fell apart. Cities burned, kingdoms vanished, empires collapsed. One of the most powerful civilizations of the time, the Mycenaean civilization, gone. The Hittite Empire, erased. Major cities across the Mediterranean,
Juan Biel,
destroyed.
welcome to the
Trade
stream.
routes
Say hi.
disappeared. Writing
Thanks
systems
for
were
tuning
lost.
in.
Entire regions fell into darkness. Historians call it the Bronze Age collapse. And here's what makes it terrifying. No one knows exactly why it happened. Some say invasion, a mysterious force known only as the Sea Peoples. Unidentified, unstoppable. They attacked from the coast, destroyed cities, vanished again. But that's only part of the story, because even powerful empires didn't just fall to invasion. Others say climate change, drought, famine, societies weakening from within. Then came earthquakes, entire cities collapsing before any enemy arrived.
Hey,
And when
Veruin,
systems started
welcome.
breaking,
How are you?
they didn't recover because everything was connected. The aid failed. Food became scarce. Food became scarce. Civil unrest began. Unrest grew. governments lost control, and once that happened, everything spiraled. Not over centuries, over decades, entire civilizations gone. And what followed was a dark age. Knowledge lost, technology forgotten, human progress reset, all from one period of collapse. And even today,
Good to have you
we
here.
still don't fully
VIP
understand
Anonymous.
it, because it wasn't just one cause, it was everything, failing at the same time. We think powerful systems are stable until they're not. Collapse
Welcome
doesn't
in meeting
always
Dex
come
PR.
from one problem. It comes when multiple systems fail at once, and once that chain reaction starts, it's almost impossible to stop. They didn't fall because they were weak. They fell because everything broke at the same time.
There is a city, older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge, and somehow almost nobody talks about it, because this civilization shouldn't exist, not where it was found, not when it was built, and definitely not at the level it reached. In the deserts of Peru, far from what we consider the birthplaces of
Simon SF,
civilization,
thanks for dropping by.
archaeologists uncovered something impossible. At first, it didn't look like much. Just hills, dust, natural formations, nothing unusual. But then, they started digging, and what they found underneath changed everything. Massive stone structures, sunken plazas, pyramids, entire city layouts, not scattered, not primitive, planned, organized, engineered.
Hey there, mam and baby.
This wasn't a
Good to
village,
see
this
you.
wasn't survival, this was civilization. And then came the real shock. When they dated it, the results didn't make sense, not even close. This city, now known as Caral, was over 5,000 years old, older than
Welcome
ancient
me,
Egypt,
Queen. Thanks
older
for
than
being here.
Mesopotamia, older than almost everything we're taught about the beginning of human civilization. And yet, there was no metal, no weapons, no signs of war, no evidence of violence. Let that sink in. A massive, advanced civilization that grew, thrived, and built monumental structures without war. Everything about Caral breaks the pattern, because when we think of ancient power, we think of domination, armies, conquest, expansion. But Caral did none of it. Instead, they built through something else: trade, coordination, shared systems, communication. They created networks across vast distances, exchanging goods, ideas, resources, without invasion. This wasn't survival through strength, this was survival through intelligence. But what truly confused researchers was something even deeper. There were
Thanks
no
for joining
weapons
us,
found.
Anna.
None. No swords, no defensive walls, no evidence of battles, no destruction layers. For thousands of years, this civilization existed without war. That shouldn't be possible. Every other known civilization eventually collapses through conflict, internal or external. But Caral, it didn't fall that way.
Girl
it simply
Paris, welcome.
disappeared.
Grab a seat.
No burning, no invasion, no massacre, just abandonment. The city was left behind, structures intact, systems untouched, as if the people just walked away, and no one knows why. Some believe environmental changes forced them out. Others think trade systems collapsed. But there's another theory, one that's far more unsettling. What if they understood something we don't?
Hey,
What if they
Glad
realized
you're here.
that growth has limits, that expansion leads to collapse, that every civilization eventually destroys itself if it keeps pushing? So instead of waiting for destruction, they chose to leave, on their own terms. Think about that. A civilization advanced enough, not just to build, but to stop, to walk away from power, from structure, from control,
Welcome to the stream.
before it
I-
consumed them. That's not weakness,
Good to
that's
see you.
awareness.
I'm
We're taught that
STRF.
progress is everything.
Welcome.
Build more, grow more, expand more. But Caral challenges that idea. Because maybe the strongest civilizations aren't the ones that last the longest. Maybe they're the ones that know when to end. No war, no collapse, no destruction, just silence. A civilization that chose its own ending before history could destroy it. Not all lost civilizations were defeated. Some simply refused to become one. There was once a city built so intelligently that when danger came, it didn't defend itself, it vanished. No walls, no armies, no final battle, just an entire population, gone without a trace. In one of the harshest landscapes on Earth, where survival alone was a daily victory, there existed a civilization that didn't think like others. They didn't build for glory. They didn't build for power. They built for something far more dangerous. They built for survival. At first glance, it looked ordinary. Stone structures, narrow pathways, basic living spaces. Nothing that would intimidate an invading force. Beneath it, hidden from sight, was something far more advanced. A second city, then a third. And below that, an entire network. Layer after layer, descending deep into the earth. Tunnels carved with precision, rooms designed for living, storage, and survival. Ventilation shafts engineered so perfectly that fresh air could reach even the deepest levels. Water systems that ensured survival for months. And when danger approached, that's exactly what they did.
Shisuku
They
says,
vanished.
message.
No panic, no chaos, no desperate defense, just silence. The entrance is sealed. Massive stone doors rolled into place, weighing thousands of pounds, designed so they could only be opened from the inside. Invaders would arrive expecting resistance. They'd see the city, empty, abandoned, no people, no movement, no signs of struggle, just stillness. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly, something began to shift, because a city without people is unsettling. Where did they go? Were they watching? The longer the invaders stayed, the more unstable they became. Paranoia spread, because you can fight an enemy you can see, but you cannot fight what you cannot find. This wasn't just a place of hiding, it was psychological warfare. The people below weren't just surviving, they were waiting, listening, and eventually they always did. Not from battle, not from force, but from exhaustion, from the unbearable tension of not knowing. And when the invaders finally left, the stone doors would open, silently, carefully, and the city would return to life. This wasn't luck, this was design. While other civilizations focused on strength, this one focused on adaptation. Every great empire in history fell, but a civilization that cannot be found cannot be conquered. And a civilization that doesn't fight cannot be defeated. Survival isn't about strength, it's about strategy. It's about knowing when to act and when to disappear. Every tunnel had a purpose, every chamber had a function. If anyone ever did manage to get inside, they would become lost. Imagine leaving everything behind, your home, your routines, and willingly going underground, into darkness, into confinement, into silence. One mistake, one careless move could expose everything. But they didn't break. They held. And that's why they survived. Real power isn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it's about positioning, about patience. The world remembers the empires that fought, but the ones that mastered survival were never truly defeated.
Imagine walking across open land with no sign of anything unusual, but beneath your feet is an entire city, rooms, tunnels, storage chambers, all hidden underground. And the strangest part, it wasn't buried by accident. It was built that way on purpose. Why would people build a city underground? Not a shelter, not a tunnel, an entire functioning city deep below the surface, hidden from the world. What were they trying to escape? Or who were they hiding from? In the region of Cappadocia in modern-day Turkey, archaeologists uncovered one of the most astonishing discoveries in history, a massive underground city known today as Derinkuyu.
Welcome PIT.
At first glance,
Good to have you.
it looked like a series of tunnels, but as researchers explored deeper, they realized something far more complex. This wasn't just a hiding place, it was a fully engineered city, multiple levels, ventilation, systems, water wells, living quarters, even areas for livestock. And it didn't just hold a few people, it could support thousands. Derinkuyu extends more than 60 meters underground. That's deeper than a 15-story building. And it wasn't alone. Dozens of similar underground structures have been found across the region, some connected by tunnels stretching for miles. This wasn't random. This was planned. The design reveals something critical. This city wasn't just built for living. It was built for protection. Massive stone doors could be rolled into place, sealing entire sections. Narrow tunnels forced intruders into tight spaces. Ventilation shafts ensured fresh air even when sealed. Everything about it suggests one thing. They expected danger. Imagine living there. The surface world becomes unsafe. You descend underground. The entrance is sealed behind you. Days turn into weeks, maybe longer. No sunlight. Only controlled access to the outside. You're not just hiding. You're surviving something. So what were they hiding from? Historians believe these underground cities were used during periods of invasion, armies moving across the land, raiding settlements, destroying cities. But instead of fighting,
Thanks
these
for
people
being here.
disappeared
Pac New.
completely. This is what makes it different. Most civilizations built walls, fortresses, defenses above ground. But this strategy was the opposite. Instead of being seen, they removed themselves entirely. No target, no visible population, no city to attack. An invading force arrives. They expect resistance. Buildings, people, supplies. But instead, nothing, empty land, silence. What they don't realize is that thousands of people are beneath them, waiting. This creates a strange advantage. If your enemy can't find you, they can't fight you. If they can't see your resources, they can't take them. This wasn't just survival. It was psychological strategy. Disappear, and you become untouchable. But there's still something unexplained. Some sections of these underground cities appear older than the civilizations known to have used them, which raises a question. Were they built by the same people who used them or inherited from an earlier, unknown culture? If these cities existed before recorded use, it means knowledge was passed down, refined, expanded, generations adapting the same underground system, perfecting a way to survive unseen. Today, Deringu stands as one of the most incredible examples of hidden history. A city not destroyed, not abandoned in chaos, but concealed, deliberately, carefully, strategically. It challenges everything we assume about ancient civilizations. Because sometimes, the greatest power wasn't in being seen. It was in knowing when to disappear. The city that disappeared overnight.
Welcome.
There are
Thanks for
ruins
joining.
scattered across the world that people visit every year. Broken walls, collapsed temples, fragments of something that used to matter. Most of them follow a pattern. War, invasion, natural disaster. Something happened. Something explains why they were abandoned. But every now and then, you come across a place that doesn't follow that pattern. A place where nothing adds up. No signs of destruction. No evidence of a final battle. No clear reason why people would leave. Just silence. And one of the strangest examples of that is the ancient city of Angkor. At its peak, this wasn't just a city. It was one of the largest urban centers on Earth. A place built with such precision and scale that even today, it raises questions we still don't fully understand. Massive stone temples, perfectly aligned. Structures, water systems engineered so precisely they could control floods, store water, and sustain millions of people. This wasn't primitive. This was advanced, highly organized, deliberate, and for centuries, it thrived. The Khmer Empire built something that wasn't just impressive. It was dominant, powerful enough to shape the region, advanced enough to outlast its rivals,
Thanks for
and
tuning
stable
in.
enough to support an enormous population, which makes what happened
Good
next
to have you.
harder to
Guam
explain.
Nishi Home
Because
Shi
at some
Happy.
point,
Welcome.
something changed. Not suddenly, not violently, but gradually, almost
Gemini.
quietly.
Hey, welcome
The systems that once worked perfectly
Thanks
started
for
to fail.
joining.
The same
Excellent.
water networks that controlled the environment became unpredictable. Floods where there shouldn't be floods. Droughts where water used to flow. The balance started breaking. And when that happens in a city built on precision, everything feels it. Food supply becomes unstable, infrastructure weakens, pressure builds. But even that doesn't fully explain it, because cities have survived worse. History is filled with places that adapted, that rebuilt, that pushed through collapse. But here, that didn't happen. Instead of fighting to maintain it, people started leaving, slowly at first, then more noticeably. Entire sections of the city left behind. Temples once filled with activity became quiet. Structures that took decades to build were abandoned. And the strangest part, there's no clear evidence of panic, no mass graves, no signs of a desperate final stand. It doesn't look like a collapse. It looks like a withdrawal, like people made a decision to leave, to walk away from something massive, something powerful, something that had defined their entire world. And that raises a different kind of question. What makes a civilization walk away instead of fight to survive? Because this wasn't a small village. This wasn't a temporary settlement. This was an empire's center, and yet, over time, it emptied. Nature started reclaiming it. Trees grew through stone, roots wrapped around walls. Structures that once represented power became part of the jungle, hidden, silent, almost erased. For centuries, it stayed that way, lost, until it was rediscovered. And when people found it again, it didn't look destroyed. It looked paused, like something had been left behind, not broken, just abandoned. And that's what makes it different, because most ruins tell a story of force. This one tells a story of decision. Something shifted enough that staying no longer made sense, and leaving became the better option. Not instantly, not dramatically, but inevitably, and that's where the real mystery sits. Because when you strip everything back, it forces you to think differently about collapse. We like to imagine civilizations fall in obvious ways: war, disaster, something visible, something clear. But what if that's not
Team
always how it
Impossible
happens?
says, message.
What if sometimes things don't collapse all at once? They erode, systems weaken, pressure builds, confidence fades, until one day people just stop believing in it. They stop maintaining it. They stop holding it together. And once that happens, it doesn't matter how strong it used to be, because the structure isn't. What holds a civilization together? The people do. And when they start leaving, the outcome is already decided. That's what makes places like this unsettling, because it's not just history, it's a pattern. One that doesn't rely on destruction. One that doesn't need a single defining moment. Just a series of small shifts, small failures,
good to see you.
small decisions that lead to something much bigger. And by the time it's obvious, it's already too late to reverse. That's why this place matters, not just because of what it was, but because of how it ended. No explosion, no final battle, no clear line where everything changed. Just a slow, quiet disappearance. And the only thing left behind are the structures, the scale, the evidence that something massive once existed. And the question that still doesn't have a clean answer: why did they leave? Was it the environment,
Welcome
the
to
failing
the stream,
systems,
Mooley.
internal
Say
pressure,
hi.
a shift in power, or something more complex that we still don't fully understand? Because when something this big disappears without a clear ending, it leaves a gap, a space where explanation should be, but isn't. And maybe that's why it still
Hey,
draws
David
attention,
Craig. Thanks
because
for
it
dropping
challenges
in.
the way we think about collapse. It
Good to
shows
see
that
you in the
not
chat,
everything ends with a
Bullhen.
moment. Some things end with a process,
Thanks
one
for
that's easy
joining.
to ignore
GL
while it's
Pi
happening,
TM.
but impossible to miss once it's done. And by then, all that's left is what couldn't leave. Stone structure, silence, a reminder that even the most powerful systems don't always fall apart. Sometimes
Hey,
they're simply
Louis, I
left
am
behind.
Sam.
There's
Welcome
a city
in.
carved directly into solid rock, and no one knows why it was abandoned. Not destroyed, not invaded, just left behind, hidden within the desert cliffs of Jordan.
Good to see you, Science.
There's a place that doesn't look real,
real.
a city not built, but carved. Welcome to
the
Petra.
stream,
From a
Marvin.
distance, you see nothing, just rock, endless walls of sandstone. But then, a narrow passage opens, a canyon so tight, you can barely see the sky. And at the end of it, something appears, massive, precise, impossible. A structure carved directly into the cliff face, not built with blocks, not assembled piece by piece, carved. Columns, doorways, detailed facades, all cut into solid stone, and that's just the beginning. Because Petra wasn't just a structure, it was an entire city, hidden, protected, engineered. Thousands of people once lived here, with water systems, storage, trade routes, in the middle of the desert. And that's what makes it even stranger. Because this wasn't just survival, this was advanced planning. They built channels to capture rainwater, stored it, controlled it, turned one of the harshest environments on Earth into a functioning city. Traders passed through,
Thanks for
wealth
dropping
flowed in,
Marguerite
Petra
Susan.
became powerful, important, strategic, and then it faded, not overnight, but slowly. Trade routes changed, other cities rose, and Petra was left behind. No major war, no catastrophic destruction, just abandonment. For centuries, it was forgotten, hidden from the world, until it was rediscovered. And even now, standing in front of it, the same questions remain. How did they carve something this precise, with the tools they had? How did they build an entire city inside rock? And why? Would something this advanced be left behind? Because cities don't just disappear, not ones like this, not without a reason. We assume ancient civilizations were limited, but places like Petra prove something else. They understood engineering, strategy, survival, at a level we're still trying to fully understand. Building something incredible doesn't guarantee it will last. Even the most advanced systems can be forgotten if they're not maintained or needed anymore. They carved a city into stone and time still erased it. There is a city built on top of the ocean, using stones so heavy, modern engineers still don't understand how they were moved. Because this place wasn't built on land. It was built on water,
Hey,
in the
grab
middle
a
of the
seat.
Pacific Ocean. Far from any major civilization lies one of the strangest places on Earth, Nan Madol. At first glance, it looks unreal. Massive black stone walls rising out of the water, canals instead of roads, structures sitting on artificial islands, like something that was never meant to exist. But this wasn't natural. Every block, every wall, every platform was placed there deliberately. The stones used to build Nan Madol are volcanic basalt. Some of them weigh over 50 tons, let that sink in, 50 tons, in a remote island chain with no known technology, no cranes, no metal tools, and no written records explaining how it was done. Even today, moving stones like that would require serious machinery. But thousands of years ago, nothing about it makes sense. There's something even stranger. The stones weren't just moved, they were stacked carefully, precisely, interlocked in a way that has survived centuries, storms, erosion, and time itself. This wasn't random construction, this was knowledge, engineering, planning, from a civilization we barely understand. And here's where it gets even more unsettling. Nan Madol is completely isolated, no nearby quarries, no clear source of the stone, which means those massive blocks had to be transported across water, without ships capable of carrying that weight, without tools that could lift them. Local legends try to explain it. They say the city wasn't built by ordinary people. They say it was created by powerful beings, who could move stones through the air, levitation, sound, forces we don't understand. It sounds impossible, but so does everything else about this place. Nan Madol wasn't just a city. It was a ceremonial center, a place of control, a place of power. Rulers lived there. It was designed to separate people, the powerful from everyone else. Water surrounding every structure, no easy access, no direct approach. A fortress without walls. But not all stories about Nan Madol are peaceful. Some say it was feared, that strange rituals took place there, that the rulers demanded control, not just physically, mindful, but psychologically. And then, like many ancient places, it was abandoned. No final battle, no clear destruction, just silence. The city was left behind, half consumed by the ocean, as if whatever built it no longer needed it. Or something happened that forced them to leave. Modern researchers still struggle with one question. How? How were the stones moved?
Welcome in,
How was
friend.
the city planned? How did a remote island culture achieve something this advanced?
Good to have you,
And why
Daniel.
does no clear record exist? Because Nan Madol challenges something we believe, that history is complete, that we understand the past, that progress is linear, but places like this prove something else, that knowledge can be lost, that entire civilizations can achieve things we no longer know how to do.
ETI,
A city on
Aroha,
water,
welcome.
built
How's
with
it going?
impossible stones, by a civilization that left behind no clear explanation. Some ruins show us what history was. This one reminds us how much of it is missing.
The battle that was
Thanks for
won
being
before
here,
it began.
Goozle.
They marched in with thousands, armored, confident, ready for war, but they were already dead. They just didn't know it yet. Across the desert, an army moved toward what they thought was an easy victory. A smaller force stood ahead, outnumbered, outmatched, completely exposed. So they laughed. No walls, no reinforcements, no chance. But something felt wrong. Too quiet, no movement, no panic, no retreat. And then the ground shifted. Dust exploded into the air, horses panicked, lines broke instantly, because hidden beneath the surface, the smaller force had prepared. Trenches, traps, weak points designed to collapse under weight. The enemy didn't walk into a battlefield, they walked into a setup. Before they could regroup, arrows rained down, not random, precise, targeted, relentless.
Hey
Leaders fell
friend,
first,
welcome to the
then the
stream.
front lines, then chaos spread. Orders stopped. Communication collapsed. Fear took over, and that's when the smaller force moved. Fast, silent, aggressive. They didn't meet the enemy head-on. They split them, cut them off, isolated groups one by one, turning thousands into fragments. Within minutes, it wasn't a battle anymore, it was a collapse. The larger army tried to fight back, but they couldn't, because they were never fighting the soldiers. They were fighting the plan. Every move they made was already predicted. Every step forward led them deeper into failure, and by the time they realized, it was over. Not because they were weaker, but because they were outplayed. Shift. Most people think battles are won with strength, numbers, force, but real victories, they happen before the fight even starts, through preparation, positioning, psychology, because if your enemy walks into your plan, you don't need to overpower them. You just let it unfold. Final line. They didn't win because they were stronger. They won because the enemy never had a
Good
chance.
to see you here.
Thousands of years ago, a
Chi2090.
powerful civilization built enormous cities, advanced water systems, and a complex society. Their cities rivaled anything in the ancient world. Their technology was far ahead of its time, and then they vanished. No massive war recorded, no dramatic collapse documented, just silence. Today, historians still struggle to understand what happened to one of the greatest civilizations most people have never heard of. This civilization is known today as the Indus Valley Civilization. It existed more than 4,000 years ago in what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwest India. At its peak, it was one of the largest civilizations in the ancient world, larger than ancient Egypt, comparable to ancient Mesopotamia. Yet strangely, its story nearly disappeared from history. For centuries, no one even knew it existed. In the early 1900s, archaeologists began uncovering strange ruins buried beneath layers of earth. The massive ancient cities emerged from the dust. The first was Harappa. The second was Mohenjo-Daro. What researchers discovered shocked them. These cities were not primitive settlements. They were highly organized urban environments.
Welcome Bunda Tassia.
Wide streets
Glad you
arranged
made
in
it.
perfect grids, multi-story, homes built from brick, and most surprisingly, a complex sanitation system with indoor plumbing, something that many later civilizations still struggled to achieve. The Indus Valley people designed cities with incredible planning. Every neighborhood had drainage systems, water wells supplied entire communities. Public baths and gathering spaces suggested a sophisticated social structure. Even their trade networks were impressive. Archaeologists discovered Indus Valley goods in ancient Mesopotamia, proving that this civilization was connected to international trade routes thousands of years ago. And yet, despite all this advancement, they left behind one enormous mystery. Their writing system has never been fully deciphered. Hundreds of small seals have been discovered across Indus Valley sites. These seals contain strange symbols and markings, but unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or cuneiform tablets, researchers still cannot read them. This means we don't know what their leaders were called, what their myths were, what their government looked like. Their entire story remains partially hidden behind a script no one fully understands. And then, something even stranger happened. Around 1900 BCE, the cities began to empty. Archaeologists noticed a dramatic shift. Cities that once held tens of thousands of people suddenly began shrinking. Buildings stopped being maintained. Trade networks collapsed. And eventually, the great urban centers were abandoned entirely. But unlike many ancient civilizations, there was no evidence of a catastrophic invasion, no burned cities, no destroyed monuments, just a gradual disappearance. Historians have proposed several theories. Climate change may have altered the rivers that supported agriculture. Flooding may have damaged the cities repeatedly. Some researchers believe trade networks collapsed, weakening the economy. Another theory suggests populations slowly migrated eastward as environmental conditions changed. But no single explanation fully solves the mystery. The disappearance remains one of history's greatest unanswered questions. Today, the ruins of these ancient cities remain quiet reminders of a forgotten world, a civilization that mastered urban planning thousands of years before many others, a culture that traded across continents, a society that vanished slowly enough to leave behind no dramatic final chapter. Their cities still stand, their artifacts remain, but their voices are silent, waiting for the day someone finally unlocks the language they left behind. Until then, the story of the Indus Valley remains one of the most fascinating mysteries in human history. Most people wait until they feel motivated before they take action. They wait for the perfect mood, the perfect energy, the perfect moment to begin. But the uncomfortable truth is this: motivation is temporary. It rises quickly and disappears just as fast. The people who succeed consistently understand something most people never learn. Motivation starts the journey, but discipline finishes it. Think about the last time you felt highly motivated. Maybe you wanted to start training, start a new project, learn a new skill. At that moment, everything felt possible. You imagined the results, the progress, the transformation, but then something happened. The excitement faded, the routine became harder, and suddenly the task didn't feel as inspiring as it did on day one. This is where most people stop, not because they lack ability, but because they relied on motivation instead of discipline. Motivation is driven by emotion, and emotions are unstable. They rise and fall depending on stress, sleep, energy, and environment. If your progress depends on motivation, your progress becomes unpredictable. One day you feel unstoppable, the next day you feel exhausted. The problem isn't laziness. The problem is relying on a system built on feelings. High performers understand this early. They remove emotion from the equation and replace it with discipline. Discipline works differently. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this today?" Discipline asks a different question. Is this part of the system? Once something becomes part of a system, it happens automatically. Elite athletes train even when they feel tired. Top musicians practice even when progress feels slow. Successful entrepreneurs work on their systems even when results aren't immediate, not because they feel inspired, but because the routine exists regardless of emotion. Discipline becomes powerful when it turns into habit. Habits reduce mental resistance. Instead of deciding every day whether to act, the action becomes automatic. Think of brushing your teeth. You don't debate whether to do it. You just do it. The same principle applies to training or studying. When discipline creates habits, progress becomes inevitable. Small actions repeated daily compound into massive results. This is where most people underestimate discipline. They look for dramatic results quickly, but discipline works slowly at first. Then suddenly everything accelerates. A single workout seems small, but hundreds of workouts reshape the body. A single practice session feels minor, but years of practice create mastery. The difference between average and elite performance is consistency. The key mental shift is simple. Stop asking whether you feel ready. Start asking whether the task is part of the system. Motivation says, "I'll start when I feel inspired." Discipline says, "I start because it's time." This small mental change separates temporary effort from long-term achievement.
Good to have you.
Motivation is exciting. It creates powerful beginnings, but discipline builds unstoppable momentum. Motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you moving, and consistency transforms effort into results. In the long run, the people who win are rarely the most motivated. They're the most consistent, because discipline turns effort into identity, and once discipline becomes part of who you are, progress becomes inevitable. There are places in the world that were never meant to be discovered, not hidden by accident, not lost by time, but deliberately erased, buried, sealed, forgotten. And yet, one of them was found, deep beneath layers of earth, far below what should have been reachable. Archaeologists uncovered something that didn't make sense. Not a ruin, not a collapsed structure, but something
Thanks
intact,
for coming in,
preserved,
Bondamoy.
designed. A system of tunnels, chambers, and pathways so precise, so intentional, that it looked less like a shelter and more like a plan. But here's where it gets strange. The deeper they went, the less. It looked like a city, and the more it looked like a defensive system, not against weather, not against animals, but against something that could find them. The The walls weren't random stone. They were reinforced, layered, engineered to absorb impact. Some passages were narrow, barely wide enough for a single person, while others opened into massive chambers, capable of holding hundreds. Ventilation shafts were hidden, not visible from the surface, meaning whoever built this didn't want anyone to know it existed. But the most unsettling part was the entrances, or more accurately, the lack of them. Because this place wasn't designed to be accessed easily, it was designed to be sealed. Massive circular stone doors, weighing tons, could be rolled into place from the inside, locking entire sections instantly. Once
Tourists,
closed,
welcome. Make yourself
there
at
was
home.
no way in and no easy way out. Think about that. A civilization spending generations building something underground with the intention of locking themselves inside it. Why? What were they preparing for? What did they know
Good to see you
that
in
we
the
don't?
chat.
Because this
ANI
changes
peasants.
everything. This wasn't just survival. This wasn't just shelter. This was fear, calculated, structured, engineered fear. The kind of fear that doesn't come from imagination. It comes from experience. Inside the chambers, there were signs of long-term living, food storage areas, water systems, sleeping quarters. This wasn't temporary. This was designed for people to stay for extended periods, maybe weeks, maybe months, maybe longer. But there's one detail that doesn't get talked about enough. Some sections were deliberately collapsed, not by time, not by earthquakes, but intentionally, as if something needed to be sealed off permanently. Imagine being there, deep underground, no light, no sound, just silence, and the knowledge that something above is the reason you're hiding, not running, not fighting, hiding, because whatever it is, you can't stop it. Some believe it was invasion, others say natural disaster, but those don't explain the design. Those don't explain the secrecy. Those don't explain why it was built before the threat arrived, which leaves a more uncomfortable question. What if this wasn't a reaction? What if it was preparation? What if they knew something was coming? Because civilizations don't build underground worlds without a reason. They don't hide entire populations without a threat, and they definitely don't seal themselves in unless the outside world becomes worse than being trapped below it. And here's the part that should make you think, this wasn't the only place like this. There are others, scattered across the world, different locations, same concept, same intention, which means this wasn't isolated. This was patterned, repeated, planned, and whatever caused it was big enough to make entire civilizations disappear underground. So the real question isn't, how did they build it? It's, what were they hiding from? Most people think power in conversation comes from speaking well, saying the right thing, having the best argument. But the real power move is silence. Because the person who controls silence controls pressure. And the person who controls pressure controls the outcome. Think about this. Have you ever said something in a conversation and the other person just stared at you without responding? No reaction, no words, just silence. What happened next? You probably kept talking, explaining, justifying, filling the gap. That's not an accident. That's psychology. Humans are not comfortable with silence. Silence creates tension, and the brain is wired to resolve tension as quickly as possible. So when silence appears in a conversation, most people rush to fill it. And when they do, they give away information, they reveal insecurity, they lose control. The most powerful communicators understand this. They don't rush to speak. They don't interrupt silence. They use it because silence forces the other person to react, and the person reacting is not in control. Imagine a negotiation. You make an offer, the other person looks at you and says nothing. No approval, no rejection, just silence. What happens? Most people panic. They start adjusting the offer, lowering the price, adding extras, trying to fix something that wasn't even broken. The silence created pressure, and the pressure forced movement. Now reverse it. You make an offer, and then you go silent. You don't explain it. You don't justify it. You just wait. Now the pressure shifts. The other person starts thinking, is this a good deal? Am I missing something? Should I accept this? They begin convincing themselves. You didn't. Push. The silence did the work. This works because of something called cognitive discomfort. The brain hates unfinished situations. When there's a gap, it tries to close it. Silence creates that gap, and whoever speaks first usually gives up leverage. In social
Hey Team
settings,
Impossible,
silence
thanks for
signals
joining.
confidence. People who talk too much often appear nervous. People who pause, who take their time, who don't rush to respond appear controlled, grounded, certain. Even if they say less, they
Welcome,
are
Sky
perceived
Black.
as more
Hope you're doing
powerful.
good.
Here's where it becomes strategic. You don't just stay silent randomly. You use silence after making a point, after asking a question, after someone challenges you. These are pressure points, moments where silence amplifies impact. Someone challenges your opinion. Most people react instantly. They defend. They explain. They try to win. But a controlled response looks different. You pause. You hold eye contact. You say nothing for a moment. Now the dynamic changes. The other person starts second guessing. Your silence creates weight. This is the shift most people never notice. Talking feels like control, but silence creates control. Because silence makes the other person think more, reveal more, react more. And the one reacting is the one losing ground. High-level leaders, negotiators, and elite communicators all use this. Not aggressively, not obviously, but consistently. They understand that every conversation has an invisible structure, and that structure is built on who speaks, who waits, who reacts. Silence disrupts that structure, and when used correctly, it rebuilds it in your favor. So the next time you're in a conversation, don't rush to fill the space. Don't try to control everything with words. Say what needs to be said, then stop. Let the silence work, because the strongest position in any interaction is not the one speaking the most. It's the one who stays composed while everyone else feels the need to speak. Master silence, and you control the room. There's a structure so old, so precisely built, that even today we're not completely sure how it was made. No modern tools, no machines, and yet it still stands, not damaged, not collapsed, still standing through weather and time. Through thousands of years of history, this structure is Göbekli Tepe, discovered in the 1990s, but dating back over 11,000 years, older than pyramids, older than Stonehenge, older than what we thought civilization even was. When archaeologists first uncovered it, they didn't believe what they were seeing. Massive stone pillars, carved with intricate detail, arranged in complex circular patterns. This wasn't random.
Welcome to the
This
stream.
was deliberate.
Say hi.
But here's the problem. At that time in history, humans weren't supposed to be capable of this. They were believed to be simple hunter-gatherers, no cities, no advanced tools, no large-scale construction. So how did they build it? Each stone weighs several tons. They were cut, moved, and positioned with precision, without metal tools, without wheels, without known engineering methods. Imagine trying to move a multi-ton stone with nothing but primitive
Thanks for
tools.
tuning in.
No
It's a
cranes,
manners.
no machinery, just human effort. And yet, they didn't just move them, they shaped them. The carvings are even more confusing. Animals, symbols, patterns, not random markings, but intentional designs. Some believe they had meaning, communication, possibly
Hey,
even
Shri
early forms
Krishna
of belief
Coffee,
systems.
welcome.
One theory
How are you?
suggests this was a ritual site, a place of gathering, a place of importance. But that raises another question. Why build something this complex before agriculture even existed? The accepted timeline says first farming, then settlements, then large structures. But Göbekli Tepe flips that. It suggests
At everyone.
large structures came first.
Underscore
Then
underscore
society
battle
adapted
performance
around
underscore
them.
underscore.
That changes everything.
I released a
It
big
means
update
humans
to the
may have
Team
been more
Finder a
organized,
few days ago,
more
which has
capable,
already
and
increased
more advanced
average
in
win
thinking,
rates by 2%.
much earlier than we believe.
Win rate is
Picture a
still
group of
increasing
people
every
working
day.
together,
Do keep an eye
planning,
on your account and let me
organizing,
know if you are seeing an
transporting stone,
improvement.
carving symbols.
Underscore
This isn't
survival
chaos.
billing
This
underscore
is
underscore.
coordination. Some
As you
researchers
might be
believe
aware,
knowledge was
survival
lost,
doesn't
passed
currently
down,
have SBS
then
rewards.
forgotten.
All
That
our
what we call
users
early
are currently
civilization
botting
may
in
not have
survival
been
for
the
free. I
beginning,
hope you're
just
enjoying
what
the free
survived.
service beaming face
Because
with
history
smiling
isn't
eyes.
complete.
Going
It's
forward,
fragmented.
I will look
We only
into a
know
new
what
billing
remains,
system for
not
survival.
what disappeared.
Cost will
Entire
stay low,
advancements
considering
could be missing
survival
from the
doesn't have
timeline.
monetary
Think
rewards
about
right
today.
now.
If
One
everything
idea
collapsed
is to
in
increase
thousands
the
of years
wild reward
past,
delegation
what
by
would remain?
5% for
What would
users who
future
want to play
generations
in
believe
survival
about
too.
us? Göbekli
Underscore
Tepe forces us to
underscore
question
dynamic power
everything,
underscore
not just how
underscore.
it was built,
I added a
but what
dynamic
humans were
power
capable
mechanism
of
to the bot
long before
so that it
recorded
allocates
history.
more
The pillars
resources when the
themselves are
server load
arranged in
is low.
circles,
This
facing
should be an
inward,
overall
as if they were
improvement to
meant to
everyone,
represent
but
something
it's
or
especially
someone.
beneficial
Some
if you
even
run your
suggest they
account at
represent
quiet
early
times
forms
when
of
few others
storytelling,
are playing.
because humans don't build without purpose,
Buy my
especially
cards
not at this
pricing
scale.
__.
Time, effort,
The pricing
energy,
model of the
all
Buy My
directed into
Cards
something
service.
meaningful, and yet we still don't fully understand it. We see the structure, but not the full intention
has
behind
been
it.
reworked and
Göbekli
prices have
Tepe isn't
increased
just an
on
ancient
average.
site.
It's
a
worth
reminder
checking out again
that
if you are
history
looking
is
to sell your
incomplete,
cards
that
instantly.
knowledge can be lost, and that the past may be far more advanced than we think. There's one lie that sounds harmless. It doesn't feel dangerous. It doesn't feel like failure. But over time, it becomes the reason nothing changes. And the worst part, you probably said it today. I'll do it later. Not now. Not yet. Later. It feels responsible. It feels controlled. But it's not. It's delay disguised as logic, because later almost never means later. It means when I feel like it, when I have more energy, when things are easier. And those conditions rarely come. Every time you delay action, you're not just postponing a task. You're training your brain. You're reinforcing a pattern. A pattern that says discomfort equals avoid. And once that pattern builds, it spreads into everything. You plan to train. You know you should go.
Hey there, PNN.
But you delay
Good
it
to see you.
later tonight, tomorrow morning. Now the task hasn't changed, but your mindset has. It already feels heavier because delay creates resistance, and resistance compounds. The longer you wait, the harder it feels to start. That's why things
Welcome,
that should be
Tia.
simple
Thanks for being here.
start to feel overwhelming. This isn't laziness. It's conditioning. Your brain is learning. Avoid now gives feel better immediately, and it prioritizes that short-term relief over long-term progress. You sit down to work. You know what needs to be done, but you hesitate. Check your phone. Scroll for a minute. That minute turns into 10. Now the task feels even harder. That's dopamine at work. Fast rewards beat slow rewards. Your brain prefers easy stimulation over difficult progress.
Thanks
so
for joining
later
us.
becomes the
Right.
default. And it doesn't just happen once. It repeats every day. Small delays stacking on top of each other until weeks pass and nothing has changed. Here's the truth. Progress doesn't disappear overnight. It fades through delay,
Sendu,
through
welcome.
hesitation,
Grab a seat.
through small decisions that seem insignificant.
Hey Rambe,
The
UK
moment
UIR.
you skip
Glad
one
you're
session,
here.
you delay one task, you push one goal back. Individually, it doesn't seem like much, but repeated, it becomes your reality. Because consistency isn't broken by big failures. It's
Rambe,
broken by
UK
small delays
UIR
over and
says,
over again.
hello.
High performers don't eliminate discomfort.
Welcome to the stream,
They act before it grows,
PANDAWA.
before the excuses build, before the resistance takes over. They shorten the gap between thought and action. They don't wait to feel ready. They start while it's uncomfortable, because they know starting is the hardest
Ruth
part,
Theory says,
not finishing.
Rambe paid
Action
our
creates momentum. Momentum creates clarity. Clarity builds confidence. But delay does the opposite. Delay creates doubt. Doubt creates hesitation. And hesitation kills progress. So instead of asking, do I feel like doing this? You ask, is this something I said I would do? That removes emotion and replaces it with standards. Because discipline isn't just action, it's identity. It's becoming the person who does things when they say they will, no matter how they feel. You're tired. You don't feel like it, but you move anyway. Not because you're motivated, but because it's who you are now. The biggest difference between people who succeed and people who stay stuck is not talent. It's not opportunity. It's how they respond in small moments. So next time you hear yourself say, I'll do it later, stop, recognize it, and act immediately. Because success isn't built in perfect